Jefferson County Commissioners. The League is about defending democracy, and that's what we're doing today. Part of defending democracy is ensuring that citizens understand how government runs. We are here today to understand the financial impacts and resources of the Jefferson County budget. I want to thank the commissioners for taking time to be with us. Before we begin with the commissioners, I have a few announcements. The League has a number of upcoming meetings. Today, all League members should receive an email, which is the invitation to our annual meeting, which will be on May 6th at 7 p.m. This is a Zoom meeting. This same email includes the Board of Directors annual report, the voting guide for our annual business, and the link to the electronic ballot. If you do not receive this information, please contact either myself or Terry Urbanowski or the office, and we will resend the information. Voting for the annual meeting begins on April 26th and will end on May 3rd. The board is proposing a number of changes. In order to give members a chance to ask questions about these changes, we have scheduled a special Zoom meeting for April 26th at 7 p.m. If you have any questions about that or about the LWV Jeffco budget, please plan on attending that meeting. The invitation that you received for the annual meeting includes all Zoom links for these meetings. May unit meetings have been moved to May 18th, 19th, and 20th. The legislative wrap-up meeting will be in late June or early July. Some housekeeping items for today. As a general rule, the League does not have an open mic when we have in-person meetings. We intend to follow our traditions as closely as possible today. We're going to be asking everyone to mute, please, except for the commissioners and the moderator. Please stay muted unless someone asks you to unmute. If you have questions, please put your questions in the chat box, and I will be monitoring the chat box. As we have time, we will ask the audience questions. Our moderator today is Linda Rockwell. I would like now to turn the meeting over to her.
Yeah, okay. I'm really pleased with the wonderful turnout that we have today, and I want to thank once again the county commissioners and some of their staff folks for taking the time to be with us. We have questions that were prepared by the board and Marge Gostick that were sent to the commissioners in advance. So, and they're pretty heavy duty. I hope we can cover all this ground in the time that we have. So first, I'd like to introduce the commissioners to you, and I'll do that by the order of their district number. So Tracy, you are number 1. Tracy was elected in 2020 to this Commissioner District 1 seat. She has been a public school teacher, a social worker, and she ran her own consulting business for a long time before being elected in 2012 to the state legislature. She served House District 29 for 8 years. And in District 2, we have Andy Kerr, who was also elected in 2020. He was a longtime social studies teacher for the R1 schools and has these skills to teach in the virtual academy, which I'm sure a lot of teachers wish they had had some of your background in the past year. Andy, I know, continued part-time teaching as well as serving in the legislature. He was elected to one of the Lakewood seats in 2006, and then to the State Senate District 22 in 2010, I believe, where he served for 8 years and until 2018. In District 3, we have Leslie Dahlkemper, who is now the old timer on the county commissioners, having been elected in 2018. Leslie's known to most of us for her term on the Jefferson County School Board, but she's, for those of us who've been around a really long time, we remember when she was a reporter for Colorado Public Radio. So, much of her career has been spent in communications. So again, I thank you all for coming, and I will hand you our first question. And keep in mind that this is primarily a session about the county budget. So the first question we have is, how much in federal dollars does Jefferson County expect to receive from the recent stimulus package, and how will it be allocated? Will some of those funds be allocated to sustainability?
Okay.
That's fine. So thank you all, Linda. Thank you, league members. We're really pleased to be here. The only thing I would add, Linda, is I am a league member, active member in the Arvada unit. So it's good to see all my fellow Arvada. I also want to recognize our county staff that are here that have joined us. They are our lifelines. We've brought with us some of the experts. So Jill Christensen, Deb Churchill are here, who are our support. Jeannie Rosalind, who is the Director of Transportation and Planning, and who is like total gold. And it will be such a honor for you all to be that when she shares her expertise with you all. And I think that's all the staff that we have. I hope I didn't miss anybody else.
I'm looking, Tracy. I think that is correct.
Okay, good. I don't want to miss anybody. So thank you.
Oh, and Chris O'Keefe. Chris O'Keefe, who is our Director of Planning and Zoning, and is here as well. So we're happy to have him.
You got the gold staff. You got the top-notch staff that are here to be able to help us with some of these questions. So thank you, staff, for being able to take the time to join us. So I'm going to start out with the new federal dollars. I think that we've been hearing a lot about Congress and the new federal dollars, the American Rescue Plan funding. This is the $1.9 trillion bill that they passed a month ago, I think. And it has a lot of stuff in it. And it really is intended to invest in our country and invest in our economy over the long haul. So there's a lot of areas that this $1.9 trillion is going towards to be able to really make sure that our economy gets back up to speed again, and that we're building it back better. So in this funding, there's $350 billion. So we're talking trillions, billions, and millions here, guys. So 350 billion for state and local governments. Jefferson County is projected to receive 113 million. And different from the CARES dollars that we had last year, this is going to come in 2 tranches. So the first tranche should come end of April, middle of May, according to Ed Perlmutter. And then the second tranche will come in another year. So we've got 3 years to be able to spend this. So this is long-term funding. This is not like the CARES dollars last year was what can you spend on COVID relief by the end of the year. So it was really looking at immediate needs. This is really investing in a number of areas. So the Treasury is still deciding the rules and how money can be spent. So the question that you have, how will funds be allocated, is difficult to answer right now. We are in the process of talking to people, talking to the community, looking at what the long-term needs are for the county. But until we get the rules from the Treasury, we don't know for positive how we can spend that money. So Jeffco schools will receive $72 million, and our cities will receive $65.1 billion nationally. So part of what will happen is Jeffco County will receive the 113 million, but our cities will also receive an allotment. For example, I'm trying to remember, maybe Leslie and Andy are remembering the information that we've gotten before. I think Arvada is getting $14 million. Westminster is getting 10. So all of our cities are getting about that amount of money. And that is separate from the $113 million that the county is getting. A lot of numbers.
It is a lot of numbers, a lot of money. So the second part of that question is, Okay. Will some of those funds be allocated to sustainability? And what you're saying, Tracy, is that you're not really certain yet what you can do with the money.
We cannot say for certain that this is how we will spend the money, but
Right.
there are certain pots of money that are in the legislation. And Andy, do you want to take that next one about the buckets or not?
Yes, the bucket. I was going to weigh in on the sustainability piece. I mean, just
Yeah.
kind of underlining, even though we don't know exactly what the parameters are going to be, we do know that this is, well, we call it one-time money, but as Tracy said, we think about half of it in the next 30 to 60 days, and then the rest of it will come in a year from now. So, you know, yes, it's one-time money, but it will, and we do know that the guidelines do spread it out over the next 2.5 to 3 years that we can spend it. Whereas the CARES Act last year, all the money had to be spent and accounted for by December 31st. So that spreads it out a little bit. As far as the sustainability piece, we just have to remember, you know, obviously we can't put it into ongoing funds, and we're not going to solve the climate crisis. We're not going to solve sustainability in the next 24 to 36 months, regardless of how much we invest in it. We are in the midst of that, and I know there's a question later on dealing with sustainability and our Sustainability Commission, which I can talk more about. But certainly that, you know, anything that we can find to invest up. For example, we're doing an RFP to get our climate action plan going. We've already raised the funds for that, but perhaps some of the supporting infrastructure to that, we might be able to use some of these funds to help jumpstart that program.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add real quick. I went ahead and put in the chat some of the numbers for our larger cities, Arvada, Lakewood, Westminster, so you can see how much those cities are getting directly from the rescue plan.
Mm-hmm. But we're looking at the money going towards things like emergency rented utility assistance, probably about around $29 billion. I think that's got to be federally. But looking at going towards those services here in the county, transportation, child care assistance and child tax credits, small businesses, expanding the PPP, emergency income disaster loan program, SNAP, which is our food benefits, improved medical access and insurance coverage. So really looking at what are the needs of the citizens in the county. What are some of the needs that have really intensified during this COVID period? So we all attend this Friday morning meeting with all the food assistance folks that are helping people. And oh my goodness, I mean, the stories that you're hearing about people in Jefferson County, I think there's a 34% increase in people who are trying to access food, like food, not just food assistance. Our food assistance folks are busier than they ever have been. So the people in our county are having needs around some of the basic services in order to be able to survive. And the American Rescue Plan funding is really aimed at how can we get services to them to be able to help them during these tough times.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I think Andy may have already answered the second question. But the second question talks about the CARES Act and says that there was an assumption by whoever wrote the question that that funding would last at some level through 2025. Is that not the case? So is there any leftover money from the CARES Act in 2020? Or did it all spent?
Yeah, the way I read that question was on the Affordable Cares Act. The CARES Act itself, the stimulus money for COVID-19 response in 2020, that was all spent and accounted for up through the end of 2020. December 31st, it had to be be spent. So that is gone and done with, and now we're dealing with the American Rescue Act, which is passed and is in process. And then also looking forward to the infrastructure bill, which we'll see what it looks like. It's always interesting. I think my guess is that Congress and President Biden will be looking at making this one a little bit more of a bipartisan bill. And so there will be more negotiation than what was just put out there. That's just my guess. But I very much expect the infrastructure bill to pass sometime in the next few months. And and I think we also need to keep that in mind, because there are investments in the American Rescue Act around infrastructure pieces and around transportation and around broadband and everything. But we also know that we should be getting more money from the federal government with the infrastructure bill. We just don't know what it looks like yet. So still a lot to be determined.
So it's all very confusing. So there's so many different pots of money, and I don't know how, if you're trying to follow this, unless you're a true policy nerd, that you really are able to follow it. So we had the CARES dollars last year from the federal government that had to be spent by the end of the year. The state also had stimulus dollars that they sent down. And so those stimulus dollars helped things like food, rental assistance, small business assistance. So they had about $700 million that they allocated at the end of the year. So that was in 2020. Now we have this the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And then coming up, we have the infrastructure, which Andy was just talking about. So it's the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. We also have the broadband internet expansion and electric grid enhancement. Congress is working on that to send money down. And then in addition, each congressperson has money, which they're calling earmarks, of community projects that they are looking at what are the special needs in their district. So we turned in a list of needs to Ed Perlmutter, Joe Neguse, and Diana DeGette around what are the special needs in both in Jefferson County, but also in this region. So, and then in addition to that, which is makes it even more confusing, is that the state is currently this week at this very moment looking at a number of bills to send stimulus money, both for schools, but also down to the county, but also looking at food assistance again, looking at rental assistance, looking at small business assistance. So there's different buckets of money. You really have to have a big piece of paper and be able to plot this out. So what it all takes is good strategic planning. And that's where Jefferson County, I think, is an expert in the overall, is that we know the county, we work closely with our municipalities. And so really looking at what are the needs both in the county, but also regionally, what are the short-term needs, what are the long-term needs? And the question you're gonna ask is, does this take care of Jefferson County's budget problems? The problem is that you can't use this to take care of, to supplant other sources.
Yeah, I think we've got a question coming up about the Gallagher, TABOR, and Federal Stimulus Act, which we can go to if that's helpful, Linda.
Which
And
is
Well, that's what
flesh it out a little bit.
Yeah, I said to myself,
good.
lucky Leslie, she gets
Yeah,
question
Right.
number 3.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay.
I always love to talk about Gallagher and TABOR. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having us, and it's wonderful to see you. It's a great turnout. I'm also a member of the Jeffco League of Women Voters and appreciate all you do for Jeffco statewide and more. So let's talk a little bit about the interaction between Gallagher, TABOR, and Federal Stimulus Act, because if you thought Tracy and Andy's outline of the federal, state, and local dollars was multi-layered. Here's another aspect of all of that that we're working on. As many of you know, the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment will help prevent the county's revenue from being impacted automatically by those statewide changes in the ratio between the residential and the non-residential property taxes, commercial buildings, and more. The TABOR revenue limitations, I think, as so many of you also know, still stay in place for Jefferson County because we're one of only a handful of counties, 2 to be precise, that have not yet debruced, specifically those county services and programs. Many of you were involved in helping us try to pass 1A, which would have lifted that TABOR cap and would have allowed us to take the additional revenue above the TABOR cap in Jeffco and reinvest those in services and programs. We're really proud to have bipartisan support on that. My own editorial comment is twofold. One, I think we had a very short runway, only 3 to 4 months. And 2, I think one of the top priorities over the last couple of years that I have been on the board and with Commissioner Kraft-Tharp and Kerr is how do we engage and better educate our community and inform them about these different aspects of our budget? How do we pay for services and programs? How does the budget operate? What's in it for you as a member of Jefferson County, and why does it matter to you? For those of us who've worked on bond and mill elections for schools, we can get pretty concrete about how those dollars are spent. We've got a lot more work to do in terms of communication and community engagement around those issues. We are doing a survey, by the way, so please look for that on our website of ways you would like to see those federal dollars regarding the American Rescue Plan spent. So back to TABOR. Revenue limitations remain in place. The county does continue to have budget challenges because of those caps. Now, we work really hard to focus on innovation, efficiencies, and more. There are examples we can share if people are interested in how we're doing that and how we continue to do it. But the bottom line is, it just does not keep pace with the increasing costs of goods and services. And that creates challenges when you look at other counties around the metro area that have debruced, who with whom we compete, both for talent and leadership and more. So let's talk for a second about the federal stimulus dollars and how that weaves into this conversation. The CARES Act money, federal dollars, as you know, do not count against our TABOR cap. Same thing for foundation dollars, foundation grants we may receive. The American Rescue Plan, as it's been mentioned, is one-time funding to address the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is only available. But I think we're going to try and be really thoughtful about how we leverage that one-time funding to maybe buy us some time to look potentially at other more sustainable funding streams down the road. I hope that was helpful and made some sense.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that. That sounds like really good news. So you're going to get this infusion from the federal government,
Right.
and you're going to get it 2 years running, and it does not count against your TABOR cap.
That's exactly right, Linda.
Well, I mean, I think that's good news.
It is good news. It is
Yeah.
good news. And especially when we're looking at a 329 million backlog in transportation projects just for Jeffco alone. So we're looking at how we can use those dollars for those efforts and all the other important needs that you heard Commissioner Kraft-Tharp and Kerr mention a little earlier.
Okay, now that's excellent. Okay. So we'll move on to question number 4. And I guess if you're going to do the rotation, this goes to Tracy. The question is, since no amount is required to be kept in the contingency fund, has it been or will it be tapped to balance the budget?
So my understanding is that we keep a very minimal amount of money in the contingency fund, primarily due to restrictions on the use of that fund, and allocating dollars to other funding sources provides us greater flexibility in addressing needs.
Okay. So I want to point out, this is something that came up during our preparation meeting for this meeting. For all of those, there are reserve requirements that are mandated by TABOR. And I believe it's 3% that you have to hold 3% of your money that is not slated to be spent in any given year. But this contingency fund is different from the reserves. So you were saying that you deliberately keep it small because there's so many restrictions on how it can be spent?
That's my understanding. Leslie, do you want to jump in there?
No, I would-
The process.
I would just say that the area that we really home in on is the reserve. You talked about that, Linda, our savings account, as we like to call it. And I want to say, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, you might want to share in the chat. I want to say that our reserves, you're right about that percentage, Linda, and we bump it up even a little bit higher. And I want to say that we're just below 30 million in terms of reserves. We've really tried to protect those reserves. But what I will tell you is that past County Board of Commissioners, before I served on the board, I would like to underscore that part, made a strategic decision, that those are their words, to spend down the reserves to help offset the increasing budget cuts that the county was facing. I see the Dales getting apoplectic there a little bit in their window, which then brought us to the $16 million in budget cuts that we made when I first set my first year on the board. And that was fun, you can imagine. And then in addition to another 8 million the following year. So this American Rescue Plan, the CARES Act plan, buys us a little bit of time, but again, one-time dollars. So hopefully
Okay.
helpful.
Okay, very much so. Okay. So question number 5. This is a tough one. In fact, there are probably 6 questions in here, but I'm going to read them all. But the thrust of it has to do with county employees. So what is the ongoing effect of the budget on employees and employee benefits? Is there a current wage and hiring freeze? Will there be another one-time payment to employees in lieu of a salary increase? Are there any employee bonuses in the budget? How many employees have been in 2021 or will be in 2022 laid off to balance the budget? Will the 4-day work week be continued? Okay, who wants to tackle that one?
I think it's my turn. And I'm going to be very transparent here. This is a series of questions that the staff really helped us with. And Tracy and I are getting to the point where we can't keep saying, oh, well, we're new here, so let me get back to you on that. But this is great because this helped. These questions help me learn more about our hiring and employee benefits and everything. But let me tell you the outline of what our staff helped us with here. Budget constraints have always been an impact on the total rewards offered to employees. So each year, as we look through the budget, and the county determines a budget for salary increases and benefit increases, of course, our budget process projects a modest salary increase and benefit increases based as we look at trends going into future budgets. However, of course, with the budget constraints, these might be funded differently to meet the financial needs of either particular departments or the county as a whole. So currently there's not a hiring freeze in the county. Departments, offices are all able to hire for positions based on their need and their funding and their specific budgets. There's not a wage freeze either. However, departments did not receive an expanded salary budget for 2021, so that increases are contingent on available funds within each department's budget at this time. Departments did receive funding for one-time payments to employees in 2021, but at this time, no decisions have been made as to additional one-time payments or other salary increases for employees for this year or in 2022. There are no additional bonuses budgeted besides those one-time payments. And so some departments may offer this type of incentive, again, contingent on their department funding. No employees have been laid off in 2021 to balance the budget, and the 2022 budget process has not been started to the point where we can really project that at this point. But at this point, we're not projecting that. And then as far as the 4-day work week, we do anticipate that continuing as a recruitment and a retention tool for our staff, and as well as a continued opportunity for savings in the various operational functions throughout the county. So I think that touches on all 6 of the questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I mean, that's good to know that that you have. That means it's really painful when you have to fire people. I remember that from the big budget crisis of a few years ago when the library had to let go an enormous amount of staff, and it's heartbreaking. So it's good that you've been able to keep things going there. I have a little question. I'm just curious about how many people are working in person versus at home.
Linda, I don't know if we have a specific breakdown in terms of the numbers. I know I'm going to call a lifeline. Deb, if you have any more information. Deb Churchill, by the way, is our chief of staff. As Tracy mentioned a little bit earlier at the top of our call. What I can tell you though, Linda and League, is that we have a number of people who, for example, are in the treasurer's office, the assessor's office, the clerk, who are public facing positions, putting in all those precautions related to COVID. And a lot of us working virtually, which is working well and showing a spike in participation in our board hearings, which we really like. It shows more people are engaged because they can tune in from home.
Ah, okay. So, I mean, it would appear that you are all working from home, the 3 of you for sure. And I was really pleased with the service that I got a year ago. I had a question about my property taxes because I moved, and some woman from the treasurer's office who was home, she seemed to have access to all the information she needed, and gave me really good help. Okay. Well, I think that is also good news. We need to celebrate when we have it, because this has been a year of bad news. Okay, so we're getting close to halfway done with the questions. The rest of them get a little bit easier. And number 6 is regards citizens review. Is the citizens budget review panel active? Is there a county audit panel, or has it been replaced by an internal review group? How do these groups aid in meeting the county's fiscal responsibilities?
Great, I can jump in on that one. The Budget Advisory Committee is new, and we're very excited about this group. We asked our community to weigh in and share applications with the board. We have a tremendous amount of expertise on this group. So it's been formed. Its kickoff meeting is slated for May 20, for May, of course, this year. And the Budget Advisory Committee is just starting out, but we anticipate that the group will provide lots of suggestions and recommendations. And Councilor Dale is one of the members of that budget committee. Thank you so much for stepping up and being a part of it. We appreciate it very much. And I think this will bring even greater efficiency and transparency to our budgeting process. We've talked also about potential citizens academies around the budget. That's something that the school district has also done in the past. I think that's just one more way to get at how we continue to inform and get good input and engage our community on these issues, because the more we know about your priorities, the better, I think, informed our policy decisions are made on the budget. As for the auditing committee, it's been meeting for several years and also provides insights and recommendations related to matters on the county's audit. We also have professional audit that is done every year. They also provide subject matter guidance on the internal audit. And the county also recently hired an internal auditor to help ensure that proper fiscal practices are in place across the county. We are very proud of our budget team and our finance team, and they have received year after year awards nationally for their excellent work in terms of the stewardship of taxpayer dollars. So we're really, really proud of them. They do good work. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Leslie. Could you expand a little bit on how many people are on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Budget Advisory Committee, and how were they chosen?
Sure. We had, for all of the boards and commissions that Jefferson County has, We have an application process that's headed up by Deb Churchill, our chief of staff. Whenever we have openings, we post them at a certain time of the year, usually in the summer. We heavily market and promote that to our community, inviting people to apply. Some boards and commissions are more popular than others. And for example, I think last year for the Jeffco Open Space Advisory Council, I want to say we received more than 200 applications. I could be wrong about that. It was staggering in terms of the number. It was really big. We've got about several to a dozen who are on this budget committee. We specifically asked for a certain skill set as well, but we always keep an open mind. You know, we want people who are engaged, who care about the county, who care about good fiscal stewardship. So we have jointly, the Board of County Commissioners and staff, look at all those applications. Our CFO and her team made some great recommendations. Sometimes the board approves all of those recommendations. Sometimes we make some changes, but we really do work side by side with our staff to make sure we've got a really strong group and a good mix of perspectives too. We may have different perspectives on the budget or funding priorities. So that's important that we get lots of different perspectives on the group as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much then. Okay, I think this puts us back to Tracy. I think it's almost the shortest question on the list.
Yay.
Which critical infrastructure item is most in need of funding and why?
And so this is why we're glad that Jeannie's here. So Jeannie, do you want to jump on and talk about our transportation and planning needs?
I'd be happy to do that.
Yay, thank you.
So I'm all about infrastructure. That's one of my major parts of my job. So this is my bias on what I think is critical infrastructure, but I'll share that anyway. So I think it was just mentioned earlier, and I know the commissioners are tired of hearing me say this, but our transportation and drainage infrastructure funding shortfall is over $300 million. In fact, $329 million to be precise. A large part of that is roadway maintenance, including asphalt overlay, repair, concrete replacement, that's curb and gutter, and structure replacement like culverts and storm sewers within the roadway. That accounts for about 134 million of that budget shortfall. And the problem with that is that delayed maintenance, particularly for asphalt, just results in ever increasing costs when repairs are eventually funded. I like to use the example of an asphalt road may not look pretty and it still functions okay, but once you start to have some structural damage to the road and you have to actually reconstruct that road, it costs a whole lot more money than doing some more minor improvements to the roadway surface earlier. So that's why it's in my opinion that trying to keep those roads up to standard is critical, because as longer you put it off, the more it costs to repair, and you're just throwing good money after bad at that point. I just think that of course our transportation infrastructure is very important for all of our economic development. All kinds of issues are related to that at the county. And so I think that that's where I really feel like we need to keep an eye on that more than anything else as far as infrastructure is concerned.
Okay. Okay, so that raises another question, but I got to keep moving on these.
Okay.
How about I pose the question and then nobody answers it? So here's what's going through my head. You're going to get this federal rescue money, which I presume there's a fair amount of discretion in how you can spend it. And then we're also awaiting the federal infrastructure bill. So maybe you'll have two shots at getting some of your needs met there. Okay, we'll move on to number 8 then. And I think we're doing pretty well on time. So the 8th question is, discuss the dollar decrease in the 2022 budget and the dollar decrease in revenue. So that's not the most well-written question, is it? But you haven't formulated the 2022 budget yet.
Exactly. I was going to say the last question may have been the shortest question. this may have the shortest answer because you just basically just answered it. But I mean, as far as anticipating though, we because of the Rescues Act and the infrastructure bill, we're not really anticipating decreases or being able to figure out, and also the fact that the county is mostly funded on property tax, which definitely tends to not be as immediately impacted as sales tax, for example.
Oh, okay. Well, then you can take another minute and tell us what is that looking like? Have the property values have gone up substantially, have they not? In the last couple of years, which is really interesting to me, given the circumstances. But
yeah, and it'd be I have to throw the lifeline out to our treasurer, Jerry Dutilio. From what I've heard from him though is in my understanding is that the property values and everything, they just tend to take longer because they're always his office and the assessor's office and his office are they're always about a year behind what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So even though property value, you know, you've seen home prices and everything have really gone up lately, we won't see those particular impacts probably for another year or so out.
okay. Yeah, so in spite the economic problems that that COVID has brought us, it has not decreased the property tax revenue anywhere near what happened in or at all compared to 2008. So.
Right. And then
Right.
also, of course, in Jefferson County, because Jefferson County is not de-Bruced, property values could absolutely skyrocket, and we would still, our budget and what we could spend would still be limited according to TABOR, regardless of how much revenue was coming in.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you for that. So the next question is, what are your plans? What are the future plans for law enforcement? So I think that falls to you, Leslie, and somehow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
You bet. I'm going to just mention quickly to dovetail on Andy's last comment. The other thing that counts, I think I mentioned this, I did not mention this. The other area of funding that counts against our TABOR cap are state grants. I know many of you know that, but it's just another interesting layer. So when the Board of County Commissioners meets, we did not do this when I served on the school board, but this Board of County Commissioners meets to talk with staff who come to us before applying for any state grants, because those grants also count against our TABOR cap. So it's just another layer of thing because of the TABOR issue that we've got to talk through. So this is probably going to be a short answer too. As you know, we're not the only county elected officials. We've got the sheriff, we've got the county assessor, treasurer, others who are all part of the team. And the sheriff will come to us. We don't have information on this just yet for the upcoming budget conversations. Those are going to begin, you know, in the coming weeks and month. So the sheriff will come to us. He will make his best presentation on where he would like to see dollars allocated and his rationale. And so every county elected official comes to the Board of County Commissioners and presents their plan for the budget year. We ask a lot of questions, and then ultimately we're responsible for what's approved and what isn't.
Okay. You know, okay, so the next question, I'm going to let you answer this also, Leslie, because I can't tell you how much I appreciate your activism on this subject. The next question is, what is included in the Wildland Fires budget? So Leslie chaired a task force that she initiated soon after she took office. And being a 37-year Evergreen resident, I was very very much paying attention to this. And last night, you will be pleased to know that I read the report. I should have done it when it was issued in November, but this is something. It does not just affect those of us with homes in the mountains. It affects everybody in Jefferson County. I can remember Chief Ouija saying that at one point, showing some model of a fire sweeping down from the mountains and taking out Lakewood, which is pretty terrifying. So if you would speak to what the kinds of funding for fire mitigation and other things regarding fire that you'd like to see.
Sure, you bet, Linda. Just to answer this question directly, and then can expand briefly on some of the other points that you made, which I really appreciate. What's included in the Wildland Fires budget? The Sheriff's Office manages this fund. Any unused revenue resides within the fund, stays there. The purpose of the fund is to account for monies generated by the fireworks stand permits. So those are 5-year actuals averaging about 15,000. With an average of about 3,000 in interest, if you're interested in those kinds of details, and expended to assist the county to mitigate wildfires. Expenditures include operating equipment, interdepartmental cost allocations, and more. Having said that, what I will also add to this is that Jeffco Open Space has been a very strong partner in mitigation. And last year, the Board of County Commissioners really pressed Open Space to think more broadly about expanding mitigation. And we really appreciated the response of Tom Hobie, who is the executive director of Jeffco Open Space. And if you visit, I can put a link in the chat about our 5-year green print, our strategic plan for open space. And you'll see that we have greatly, significantly increased the amount of acreage that we will be mitigating to lower wildfire risk. We know that when our forests are healthy, those fires tend to burn slower and lower to the ground. So Linda, to your point about those embers flying and traveling, and we've seen, because in part of climate change and other reasons, drier conditions and more, our topography and large conifer forests that are very dry, that we are the highest county in the state for property damage due to wildfire risk. And evergreen and conifer rank nationally, I believe, in the top 5 right now, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a real issue for us. And I'm so grateful to Commissioner Kraft-Tharp and Commissioner Kerr for their strong support of all of us working together. And that task force is still in play and very active in moving forward the recommendations. We're at different stages with those recommendations. And Chris O'Keefe with our Planning and Zoning Department has also done some incredible work along with Jeannie, who's been a great partner in this area, on how we think about zoning and regulations related to development in the foothills community. So we're looking at that issue as well.
What about direct aid to the fire districts to help individual homeowners do mitigation work?
Yeah, one of the things that we look at is how we can partner with those different fire rescue departments. And one of the things they can do is they can issue a mill levy increase. And we've seen some of them successfully do it. Linda, I want to say Evergreen did that not too long ago. And I think Inter Canyon was successful with its election. Elk Creek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they, part of our challenge as a county is if we could take those excess TABOR dollars that we get, which are not insignificant in terms of funding, we could use those to address that issue and others as we think collectively about mitigation. That's the whole point of that task force. We've got fire chiefs around the table, water experts, forest management experts, business leaders, and others to really say, what are our priorities around mitigation? And additional revenue streams as part of that. If we do another 1A down the road, I'd like to see us build in some, this is just me, but if I were queen for a day, I'd like to see us build in, dollars for additional fire mitigation and more.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, I thank you for all the work that you've done on this issue, which affects all of us in the county. Okay, so let's rotate back to Tracy with our 11th out of 14 questions. Describe how special districts affect the county's ability to tax, that is, to make adjustments to the mill levy.
So again, I think we have Chris O'Keefe here to talk about special districts. I know that this is a interest of you all, that you all have been looking at this. So Chris, are you here to talk about special districts?
Hi, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I'm here. I can talk about special districts to the extent that I know about special districts. I guess the specific question about the relation to the mill levy, I'm not as versed on that as I am on what the county does in reviewing special district plans. And I can talk until I'm blue in the face about that. So you all could stop me if you want. I also know, because I read the material that the league has sent, that you all have done a great deal of work with Lakewood on special districts. So my guess is that you understand the roots, the bones of the special district legislation, which of course, or statute, which of course we are also bound by in Jefferson County. That being said, we do see a lot of special district activity in Jefferson County. We've got over 200 special districts in place currently, providing a various range of services. Anything from water and sanitation to streets and transportation, mosquito control, many services that special districts want to provide. In Jefferson County, we have special district policy that guides our review of special districts, and that policy dictates the information that staff provides to the Planning Commission and to the Board of County Commissioners to aid them in evaluating and considering approval of special district plans. Criteria that we look at and we try to bring up are, first of all, to determine whether the services that the special district proposes to provide are actually needed. Is there someone else in the area who's providing those services? Are these things that the future community will need? One thing that's interesting in our policy is we've got a clause that says that special districts are discouraged for providing the cost for routine infrastructure that is required by our land development regulation. So it's kind of something that needs to be sorted out with every special district. Is the special district just being used to provide what a developer would normally provide anywhere else? We want to limit the number of special districts. So if there's a special district that can provide a range of services rather than 10 special districts for each service, that's important. Timing is critical for the county to review. So if a special district is being proposed, it needs to be timed appropriately so that it can, a rezoning if that's necessary. The platting of properties takes place, and then the construction, all those things need to take place in a way that works out. So we review those. The costs of providing that infrastructure, we need to make sure that the costs, which the mill levy is based on, is reasonable. So our engineering team will look at the special district plan and make sure to the best of their ability that what the plan is proposing is reasonable and cost effective. And I guess finally, we make sure that the special district plan includes a way to notify future property owners that there is a special district, that the special district does have its own mill levy, and that's something that they're going to end up paying down the line. And that's about all I can say, but certainly I can answer questions if there are any specific questions.
You were the right person. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, well, that does lead me to have a question. Was what you were speaking of regarding the formation of new special districts as opposed to old ones? For example, the Evergreen Metro District controls virtually all the water in Evergreen. Do you have any say? Do you or the commissioners have any say over what they do? Or is it, does all the responsibility fall on the elected board of Evergreen Metro?
Yeah, I mean, they have their own governing board, and Chris,
Right.
please feel free to jump in. But I will say that as we look at land use cases, we will reach out to them as part of the criteria we have to think through regarding rezoning and, you know, can this proposed development, for example, be supported by that water district or a fire district or more. Chris, I don't know if there's more you would add on that front.
You know,
But,
that's
where
exactly
the
what
connection is.
that's exactly what I would have said too, Commissioner. Nice work, as always.
Okay. So the next question relates to the same thing. And I would like some clarification on this. The next question was, what changes are being proposed regarding the county's responsibility in overseeing special districts? Are you considering any changes?
We are going to be looking at this next month at one of our regular Tuesday meetings or briefings. I believe that we'll be going over looking at what the special district policy is, and I see that it's also in the chat there that all of you can go in and look at what we have. But going over that and also talking about what changes we might want to make. So we are going to take a look at that next month.
Okay.
So tune in.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that people have talked about for years, but I just don't see I mean, in some ways it feels like we go from crisis to crisis. And special districts rarely provoke them, but we have way too many. And it's crazy, for example, for the mountain area to have 6 or 8 fire districts, you know? So the consolidation of fire districts or of special districts, I think, is something that somebody ought to have on their radar screen going forward. But that's for another day. Okay, I'm not sure what order we are in as far as the commissioners answering the questions, but here it is, and you can pick. Is there a method to coordinate work with municipalities for sustainability, transportation, and building codes?
Andy, do you want to take this one since it touches on sustainability? And
Yeah,
I think that's the next
absolutely.
one.
So yes, the answer is yes. So right now, Jeffco does coordinate with the municipalities on transportation issues via our JeffTag group, which stands for Jefferson County Transportation Action and Advocacy Group. So JeffTag with 2 A's in the tag. And also the Jeffco Collaborative Transportation Forum. So I think we had a meeting just last week. I remember popping into that where all of the various, you know, our staff as well as mayors, councilors, and commissioners get a chance to kind of, you know, make sure that we're looking at transportation holistically in Jeffco. And then, of course, the county, all the metro area counties are connected together, as well as the metro area cities as well. Dr. Cog and Tracy is our Dr. Cog commissioner representative at this time. So yes, from that transportation point. As far as building codes, there's no real formal coordination. All of the entities in the metro area all use the same international codes for building codes. So certainly those discussions come up, but more on a case-to-case basis than any real long-term planned coordination. And then with sustainability, so Jefferson County has a sustainability commission. And just as an example, the chair of the Sustainability Commission is Jeff Wong, who also happens to be the City of Lakewood Sustainability Coordinator. And certainly our Sustainability Commission works closely with all of the municipalities, certainly we have a sustainability coordinator for Jeffco, whose job is substantially internal at this point. That's part of our climate action plan, is looking at how we can move forward as a full county together, and really work on that. So my intent, and I know the intent of the Sustainability Commission is definitely to keep all of those ties together and to make sure that our RFP that goes out for implementing our climate action plan definitely builds on these relationships we have. And it's not just with the municipalities. NREL is a great partner right here in Jeffco. They're really one of the premier institutions worldwide. They're one of the premier institutions on working on sustainability and addressing climate change. So we definitely are in close conjunction with them as well.
Okay, that's excellent. Especially, you know, to hear about NREL doing some work locally. So that your sustainability commission, is it filled the same way as the other boards and commissions?
Yep.
People apply and then they serve a certain term, and okay.
Yep.
All right. So there may be some amongst us who would like to consider joining that. Okay, we have the last question. So maybe Tracy, it seems about like your turn here. Did the CARES Act fund a homeless coordinator? If so, is a coordinator in the upcoming budget? And what would be the responsibilities of this position?
So let me just touch base quickly, and then Leslie, you said you serve on the Jeffco Connections, don't you? So let me just start out, and then Leslie can jump in and talk about Jeffco Connections. So yes, we do have a regional homeless coordinator, and we do have 2 homeless navigators. So they're funded by both federal, state, and county and grant funding. So yeah. And so, but our primary homeless initiative is the Heading Home Committee as part of the Jeffco Connections.
Okay.
You want to jump in, Leslie?
Happy to. So a couple things about homelessness. As we know, this is an incredibly complex, challenging issue that we as a county alone can't address. It really does take cross-county collaboration. All 3 commissioners are part of the metro area county commissioners. We work very closely with our mayor, city councilors. Councilor Dale, I know that you are engaged in our quarterly meetings that we have, where we carve out time for city councilors, mayors, county commissioners, our staff, and other experts to talk about homelessness and how we're progressing on that issue. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of additional context there. Human Services does have a regional homeless coordinator position, in addition to 2 homeless navigators using federal, state, and county and grant funding. Those positions will continue to be budgeted for 2022 and on. It's really important to have someone who stewards this work, working with elected officials and other community partners. We did use some CARES Act dollars to support some of the homeless coordination and navigation work that was directly related to COVID response. For example, the implementation of what we call the non-congregate shelter. Okay, great. What the heck does that mean? What we would do is we would provide vouchers for individuals in our community who are homeless, so they were safe in area hotels, and that they would also get the support services that they needed as well. So that was CARES Act money that helped with that too. Jeffco Connections, you heard Tracy mention that just a moment ago. It's a collaborative group that is aimed at streamlining and coordinating services for children, youth, and families, consisting of 25 partner agencies. Many of you would be familiar with those different nonprofits and agencies as well. And it also supports coordination of homeless navigators among the county and municipalities. So a lot of work on that front. And by the way, you heard Commissioner Kraft-Clark mention what is called the community partners funding, something like that. It used to be called earmarks. They're trying to get away from the earmarks word, but we know better as earmarks. And we did ask for $6.2 million in a proposal to, I believe this one was to Congressman Perlmutter. It was related to our homeless challenges and how we address those. So more on that front to come. It's an issue we're working very closely with our mayors and others on.
So can I just jump on that? So as most of you know, I used to run the homeless youth shelter here in Jefferson County, so I have particular interest in this issue. So part of what this $6.2 million would look at doing was so in the old days, we had shelters where people would go in and they would stay like for up to 90 days while plans could be made to figure out what should be the next step. We also had walk-in centers where people could go and hang out for the day. So yes, Councilor Dale, we remember the old days, right? Well, now it's called navigation centers. And so part of the plan is to look at navigation centers around the counties, which is similar to that the old concepts where we would have some beds, we'd have some services, we would have, you know, a safe place for people to go, really a safe harbor for people to figure out what the next step is. So it really is exciting to see Jefferson County, you know, being part of some pretty innovative, creative planning.
Okay. Yeah, this is an issue that since I moved to Lakewood, it seems to concern me more. I mean, I can tell you where you can find some homeless people in my neighborhood. So it's somewhat concerning. So if I could just ask a little follow-up question, are you considering, you or any agency considering building permanent housing, permanent low-income housing?
Yes, we work very closely with the Foothills Authority, Foothills Housing Authority, to work on increasing the availability of affordable housing. It's a huge issue, as you all know.
Oh, yeah.
I think the average rent right now is $1,500 to $1,800 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. So we work closely with them on that front, but we've got a lot more work to do there as well. People should be able to live in the place that they work and play, and we've got to ramp up those efforts, no question.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate your concern about that. Okay, so so that does it for the questions that we submitted.
Ready? And I'm going
Okay.
to call on Kathy Smith to ask her question. Kathy, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't find the mute button. Thank you, commissioners. Very, very interesting. Just wondering, following up on what Commissioner Dahlkemper just talked about for the affordable and workforce housing. I know you're doing county-wide strategic planning right now. What in there are you considering in the way of affordable and workforce housing for that?
Kathy, thanks so much for mentioning the strategic planning work that the county is doing right now. We have just launched that effort. Thanks to any of you who have participated in our community focus groups. I think we have another one coming up this week or two, if I'm not mistaken. So those are all, it's integrated in some of the bigger picture work we're doing, from mission, vision, specific strategies, and more. But right now we're in listening mode. And we'll look at areas of common ground across the county that we hear from our different groups, from our staff, and also from commissioners. And commissioners, I don't know if there's anything, is there anything else you'd want to add to that? I can pull up some specifics about what we're doing around affordable housing, if that's helpful. But right now we're pretty early on in that process for the strategic planning, Kathy.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you.
No, I want to get to Evie's question. No meeting is complete without talking about COVID.
We'll get to Evie's question in just a minute. Ann Rotowski is next. Ann, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. This is on a way different subject, but we've done a lot of work on immigration this past couple of years during the league and in the league. And I wondered, are you aware of how many refugees or immigrants reside in Jefferson County? Any of you?
I am not. I know that we have a number of churches that throughout the county that sponsor refugees, but I'm not aware of the number.
No.
Are you?
You know, we work very closely with Connectando and other groups. There is also, and I'm going to blank on the name, but there is a refugee group. I want to say it's based in Lakewood that works with our immigrant community as
Are you talking
well.
about the IRC?
Yes, yes.
They're no longer in Lakewood. They don't no longer stationed over here, but yeah, I'm acquainted with them.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. Are there specific areas you think we should be paying closer attention to that we may not be on this issue?
Well, I think it would be maybe interesting or helpful to know how many there are, and you know, they have their own special needs. And sometimes they aren't connected with a particular agency like IRC or a church. But I don't know exactly how you'd outreach to them.
We do a little bit of work through the task force as well that Commissioner Kraft-Tharp mentioned earlier, the Food Integrated Task Force. Those are food banks and nonprofits like the Action Center, Mountain Resource Center, and others that are working often with those immigrant populations as well. We've actually been talking about cultural sensitivity related to food, to recognize those different and unique cultural issues as people come to food banks and make certain requests, and how do we work as a community on those issues as well. So there's some great experts who are on that task force who've been working at least on that particular path. But I think you raise a really good point, Ann.
One of our directives from the membership for the coming year is to see how immigrants directly affect Jefferson County, both illegal and legal. And so that's part of where Ann's question is coming from, is where can we go for resources?
I think Human Services, our Department of Human Services is a great resource. So, and I think some of our local churches. So there's what I've heard is there's a fairly large Russian community in Jefferson County. And so I think connecting with some of the and Korean community. So I think that there's some of our local churches, you know, have been really, really strong in supporting those folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Edie, your turn. You're muted, Dart.
Thank you.
You're muted again, Evie.
Oh, sorry. So how is the county handling COVID? Because the state doesn't have any mandates anymore and left it up to the counties. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. So the state still has mandates. So we have the the mask mandate that is a state mandate. And there still is mandates in terms of how many people. So if you have a group of, I think isn't it 500 people or more that are meeting, the state has to approve those activities. So if you're planning a big wedding or a big anniversary this summer, be aware you need to get the state's approval to be able to have those big groups. But the state, what you're talking about is the state, we had the dial, which looked at especially what businesses, gyms, restaurants, how they could run their activities. And the state has stopped that dial. Jefferson County has joined in partnership with our county partners, Boulder, Adams County, Denver. Who am I missing? Arapahoe, not Douglas.
Broomfield?
Broomfield.
Yeah.
So everybody has come together because, you know, COVID doesn't change if you cross the Sheridan border. So we've all come together. We've put together our variation of the dial. Everybody went to blue. And then after a month period of time, which would be May 16th, we would have a new level, which hopefully you would move to, which is clear, which clears out the restrictions. So the other big change is that in the, last week, the metrics that we used to look at where you were at the dial were things like how many people were coming down with COVID, what was our positivity rate. So now the metrics that we use to establish where you're at on the dial is hospitalizations. So there's some changes, but the county and our regional partners have really stepped up and we're working together.
Can I do a follow-up question?
No, yeah.
Because
Okay.
speaking of the 500 people, there was this whole thing with Bandamere last year. And so where is that right now?
I would say we're still in litigation and probably can't address that issue at this time, but Evie, we can say we're still in litigation on that front. That's the short answer.
Right.
And I'm going to also put in the chat, because your question is well taken, Evie, about the state dial. The state dial dissolves. The state still has some mandates in place. Now the counties are working on exactly. Your expression says it all. But what I'm going to do is I just put in the chat a link to our COVID page. It's a one-stop location for all information related to COVID-19 in the county. And you'll also find on that page a box you can click on that talks about dial status, tons of information, mass guidance, and much more resources. We launched what's called the community campaign to ensure people had resources for food, housing, rental assistance, and more. Did that with our partners as well.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say that I think there's 3 things that we have learned from COVID. Okay, one is it's a juggle to where the federal government has their restrictions and their ideas and their plans, the state has their restrictions and their ideas and the plans, and the counties do. And each level, and then the local municipalities, each level has got to juggle with the restrictions and plans of the other. So it's a juggling act. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I think we've all learned to be nimble and flexible. We get 3 updates a week on this from the Department of Public Health. And what we hear on Monday is very different what we hear on Friday. Things change very, very quickly. So that I think that's part of the perplexed look on your face, Evie, is that it's confusing, but it's about being nimble. It's about being flexible. What we know about the disease and what's happening with it, the pandemic, changes so fast, and we need to be able to change with it. And the third thing I think we've learned is I think we have all taken this great pride that we are, we have technology and, we have these little computers that we hold and look at all these, we go off into space, but in the end, biology wins. In the end, there was a bug that, sent us all back to our homes. And it doesn't matter how cool all of our technology is. I think it's brought us back to basics, that biology wins.
I would add one other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add one other point to that. I think one of the biggest issues we continue to struggle with is closing the gap among ethnicities. Our Latino population it continues to be an issue that we have got to work on closely with groups like Conectado. Our Jeffco Public Health team is devoted to closing the gap in terms of the numbers of vaccinations. That was also an issue with COVID testing. We have a number of staff members like Paulina Arises, who's done some tremendous work in this area, but we still have some work to go. And that is something that I would add to that list is absolutely critical, that we have equity across Jefferson County. Everyone who needs a shot has access to getting that shot in the arm. And if there's one positive note to end on, I put it in the chat. On the vaccine front, we just heard from our public health director yesterday that 59.8%, almost 60% of Jeffco residents 16 and older have received their first shot. That's really good news. And that is a real tribute to our public health department and our health directors and medical providers. Also, Jeffco ranks number 2. We'd like to be number 1, but not being in the top 3 is good in terms of vaccine distribution. So we're getting there, but we need to keep shining that light on the disproportionate impact of COVID on different communities of color.
All right. We have one final question, and it's kind of like, how can League serve you all? How can we help you in your efforts?
Are you still doing your observation of commissioner meetings?
We haven't been. I would like to get it started up again.
I think that would be helpful. I think having the league involved in what's happening with county commissioners and our hearings and our briefings, and helping us make sure that we're keeping on track, that we're staying focused. So yes, I think come back.
Commissioner Kerr, do you want to jump in? Because I've got some thoughts too, but please go ahead.
I was just going to exactly what we're doing right now, because I'll tell you some of your questions that you had today really help focus and answer some questions I might have had in the back of my mind that I hadn't really focused down to getting answers for them yet. And so that will help me too. And just staying in touch, watching our commissioner meetings and briefings, and letting us know when you have questions or there are things, like the special districts that you would like us to take a look at. That's your interest in that helped bring about this this look at special districts for next month. So exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I want to just dovetail on Commissioner Kerr's comment about issues, whether it's wildfire, whether it's homelessness, as we heard Kathy mentioned earlier. We really need your help in saying, because we're hit with so many issues every day, every hour of the day. And to have your expertise and your strategic thinking about where the county's at, are there certain issues that are falling through the cracks? And you mentioned immigration. You're absolutely right about that. So having your feedback, I think, is really helpful. The only other thing that I would add to what Commissioners Kraftharp and Kerr have already said is our boards and commissions. And I know you watch those closely. If you can help us promote openings, if you would be willing to engage in those boards and commissions in ways that work for you, we would appreciate that as well. One really quick footnote on wildfire, I just want to come back to that super quick. In the chat, I added a link, a Zoom link. We're hosting a Jeffco Foothills Town Hall. It's on May 15th, Saturday at 9 a.m. on wildfire risk, reducing wildfire risk. Rep. Cutter is a part of that, Senator Story. By the way, Rep. Cutter is the new chair of the Wildfires Matter Legislative Committee. Just heard that last night, so that's really good news. We work very closely with both legislators, and they have been incredible collaborators in this area. So more info in the Zoom. We've got some great people speaking, including the Director of the Department of Natural Resources, Dan Gibbs, Cynthia Latham from Evergreen, and then Fire Chief Skip Sherlaw. Some of you may know him. He heads up the Inter Canyon Fire Rescue District. So that should be a good one.
Linda, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much for the information. I did see the link on that, and I will definitely be there, because I'm writing my next Canyon Courier column on fire, and it's due about a week after that. So I thank you all. Would you like to take a couple of minutes, each of you, to wrap up? We're kind of at the end of the time. It's 2:29. So we can quit, or you can have the last word. What would you like?
I think I'm fine.
Okay.
Huge thank you.
I have about a 6-minute speech ready to go, but I'm going to defer.
Christina, we may need your help with the mute button with Commissioner Kerr. You know how he is. Just a huge thank you on behalf of us all for this opportunity to sit down and talk with you about these issues. We appreciate it very much and hope for more opportunities like this ahead. Thank
We're
you.
so grateful you came today. Thank you.
Yes, we're especially grateful to you, and not just for sharing this hour and a half with us and all the time it took to prepare, but I think that it gives our members a really good look at how many topics you need to know about and take action on. I mean, it's a huge job, and I think a lot of people who live in the municipalities don't really appreciate the scope of the commissioner's responsibilities. So we thank you for all you're doing, and we thank you for being here today. I think it was an excellent
Let's
meeting.
do a hand for our staff who helped
Yes.
us prepare and who came today. Yay. Don't we have the best staff?
You do.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good to see you all.